for my 6th art fight victim. We have Anisa by Caffeinerabbit. Welcome, friends. While I typically struggle with using references, here I am bringing the entire reference into the piece and proceeding to trace it. I'm a fake. I'm a fraud. I'm a phony. How can I consider myself an artist when I can do such an atrocity? The thing is, when it comes to art fight, there's a lot of drawings that I want to be able to get through in the month. When it came to this idea that I had, I thought it more important to create something that made sense and fit this idea that I had and complete the drawing and move on to the next one than it was to struggle for any length of time on trying to get that proportion just right and then maybe even still falling short and not being happy with it. I know that this does limit my growth potential for this piece, but honestly, it was the right choice for me this time. I did still gain more knowledge when it came to the perspective of the piece, given the fact that I did do some guides for how large like her head was and her shoulders were. And I did make some modifications, of course, to make sense with that character instead of just going 100% based off of the reference that I was given. After I rough in a guide of where the shoulders are at, the elbows are at, and the head should be at, and I am happy with the general proportions of that, I went ahead and moved on to where the dress would end up being, since it is going to be a good portion of the piece. I wanted to get that in. I then didn't need the reference anymore and went ahead and continued working on roughing in some of the key features of the character, such as her eyes and her muzzle, just making sure that I was going to get that right. A little bit about Anisa from Caffeinerabbit's description. She is a perennial tomboy with little patience for nonsense and a somewhat short fuse, but nevertheless friendly and outgoing as long as you stay on her good side. Growing up, she was the only daughter in a family with 6 rowdy brothers. Anisa had to learn how to stand up for herself very quickly, and as such, she grew up knowing how to handle herself in a fight. It wasn't uncommon to find her getting into brawls with schoolyard bullies and thugs, coming home with a bloody nose and a self-satisfied grin. As she entered her teens, she joined the family business, working as a barmaid in her family's tavern, where she also served as the de facto bouncer, much to the surprise of the occasional unruly patron or lout with wandering hands. It's not a job she's terribly fond of, but since she still lives under her parents' roof, it's the least she can do. Plus, the tips are pretty good. What she really wants, however, is to be like her older brother, Gibson, a world traveler and relic hunter. She's idolized her big brother since she was little and dreams of someday following in his footsteps, to see the world and go on daring adventures. For now, however, she makes do with her pulp action novels along with the occasional trashy romance. Anisa is especially strong and sturdy as an experienced fighter who can move with blazing speed. Because of her small stature and species, people tend to underestimate her, but she can easily take on foes several times her size. Ironically, however, the sight of blood unnerves her. Just one of the reasons she prefers her fists to a blade or other kind of weapons. While possessing a deep curiosity of the world around her, and by no means unintelligent, she is nevertheless not a very deep thinker, having little patience for drawn-out analysis, and preferring to go with her gut instincts. On the surface, she appears to dislike most stereotypical feminine things. However, she does have a secret girlish side. She simply keeps it well hidden. I hope with this drawing of Anisa, I can help honor that feminine side of her that she tries to keep hidden. I'm very happy with how her expression came out. I wanted her to look happy while she's, checking herself out. And I also love adding the little fluff details to the ears. It's my opportunity to add plant. Yes, take over plant. Grow. I did start adding shadows to work on getting definition going with the piece and thinking more about how I wanted the lighting to look. I really had to keep in mind how the lighting was going to play on the Anisa in real life versus her reflection, especially given the fact that mirrors will reflect light back. I also had to think about what kind of lighting source there would be. Is there natural light? She is indoors, so there's going to be potentials for natural light. There's going to be potentials for artificial light. So if there's like a lamp or a ceiling light that is on in the room. Something else that I want to work more on is the folds of clothes. That's definitely been something that's tricky to me, and it can really help or hurt a piece depending on your familiarity with it. I feel more confident when it comes to like a pleated skirt or folds in a dress, but when it comes to shirts or pants, no. I just kind of mix stuff up, and looking at this piece, it shows. It's something that this is a prime example of how important it is to use a reference when you're working on something, especially that you're not super comfortable with. If I were to have had more time with this and used a reference for how the folds of the clothes looked, I could have made this a little bit more of a realistic piece. Of course, my style is always going to be cartoony, at least for now. It would have still helped the piece more instead of looking like I made it up, which maybe it's not as obvious to you. I'm actually curious on your thoughts on it, if you feel like the folds look really out of place or not, especially by the end. I'm curious about how you're feeling it looks in the end. But for me, it feels very painfully obvious. I've always been so envious of artists who can pull off folds of clothing. Again, it just seems so simple and something that most people don't even think about. But especially with the fact that it's something I struggle with, I am always in awe when I can see that someone clearly has an understanding of how they work. Something that I typically do with my art is I feel like my shadows are also quite light typically. It's almost like I'm too scared to shade and make stuff darker. So I've really been fighting and working against that to make sure that I was coming up with a very dynamic drawing instead of it looking so flat. If you're working too much with the same range of tones, it ends up making your image look really flat and not doing your drawing justice. When you're working with more extremes, lights and darks, you can really help make the character pop and draw interest to certain areas depending on where you've had the light and the dark. So I added this poster. I was imagining that Anisa had this character that she liked to go watch movies of. You know, kind of like Indiana Jones style, some person who's just so cool. And she has a poster of them, a movie poster. It is a little unfortunate because it does end up getting cut once I crop everything down, but that's just how it goes. I just wanted to make sure that I was fleshing out the atmosphere of the piece and, again, honoring the character and thinking about what this space would really consist of. What would this character have in their space? I'm not sure if she's just in her room or if she is somewhere else just checking herself out. Maybe she's on her way out. I'm not sure. Oh yeah, adding the blind details and some furniture in the space. Adding some blue in the corner to help emphasize the focus on the character. I did also change the color of the poster so that you're not so drawn to how high contrast the font was. Again, it gets cropped in the end, so it didn't even end up mattering, but I thought it would be really fitting for this character to have a movie poster of someone cool that they look up to. I wanted to make the character in the poster look like they're running away from an explosion. Jump scare! I want to say a thank you to Caffeinerabbit for posting Anisa for me to be able to draw and participating in Art Fight this year. They have a ton of cute art, so please feel free to follow them at any of the included links. And that's the finished piece. I hope you enjoyed watching as much as I enjoyed creating this piece, and until next time, take care of each other. Bye for now.